For grain, the cowboy rode into town and left with a widow who changed his fate forever. On the frontier world orchestral, 9, wind never stopped moving. It carried red dust across the flat plains, over dry roads, past broken machines, and through the thin metal streets of a town called Dryfall. The dust got into boots, lungs, food, and memory. People in Dryfall said the planet wanted everyone gone. The only reason anyone stayed was because of the grain. It was not normal grain. It was a hard, golden crop made by old science and desperate people. It could grow in poor soil, under weak light, and through long seasons of heat. Ships from richer worlds came for it when supply lines failed and star systems began to starve. On Kestrel 9, grain meant money. Grain meant power. Grain meant somebody would always come to take it. That was why Dryfall had become a dangerous place. Most people there kept their heads low. Some worked fields, some repaired machines, some sold things in small shops that looked ready to fall apart, and some watched, waited, and worked for men who did not live in the town, but owned most of it anyway. Late one afternoon, when the sky had turned orange with dust and sunset, a rider came down the long road into Dryfall. He rode alone on a lean desert mount with metal braces on its legs and a faded saddle that looked older than half the buildings in town. The rider wore a dark coat with worn edges, a broad hat, and a scarf to keep out the dust. His face was calm, weathered, and difficult to read. He did not look rich. He did not look lost. He looked like a man who had ridden a very long way and had no reason to hurry. People noticed him at once, not because strangers were rare. Strangers came and went all the time. They noticed him because he was human. Humans were uncommon, that far from the core systems. On Kestrel 9, stories about them traveled faster than facts. Some said humans were too stubborn to die properly. Some said they fought dirty, smiled too little, and never forgot an insult. Others said that when a human arrived alone, trouble had usually arrived first. The rider ignored the stares and brought his mount to a stop outside a small trading post near the center of town. A rusted sign hung above the door. Half the letters were gone. Inside, the owner looked up from behind the counter and narrowed his eyes. The human stepped in, removed his gloves, and brushed dust from his sleeves. "What can I do for you?" the owner asked. The man's voice was low and steady. "Need feed, water, and a room if you got one. You passing through?" "Maybe." The owner studied him for another second. "Name?" "Elias Varn." The owner gave a slow nod. "Room small. Water's not cheap. Feed costs extra." Elias pulled out a few credit chips and set them on the counter, without complaint. That made the owner look at him differently. Most drifters argued. Most mercenaries made threats. Elias did neither. As the owner counted the payment, his gaze moved to Elias's side. There was a weapon there. Not a polished pulse pistol. Not a military plasma sidearm. It was an old revolver, made of dark steel and wood, worn smooth from use. It looked ancient beside the energy rifles common on the frontier. The owner frowned. "That thing still works." Elias looked down at it once. "It works." The owner decided not to ask more. Outside, whispers had already started. "A human? What's he doing here? Looks poor. Poor men don't travel alone out here. Maybe he's bounty. Maybe he's dead and doesn't know it yet." Elias heard enough to know the town was nervous. He had seen places like Dryfall before. Tired places. Hungry places. Towns that had learned to survive by pretending not to notice danger until it kicked in the door. He took his key, went upstairs, washed the dust from his face, and sat on the edge of the narrow bed. From the small window, he could see the street below, the old water tower, and beyond that, the fields stretching red and gold into the distance. Some fields were full. Some fields were black, burned. He sat still for a long moment, looking at them. Then he stood, put his hat back on, and went back downstairs. The evening crowd had grown. Workers, drivers, field hands, and armed men with hard expressions filled the lower room. Some drank. Some played cards. Most kept glancing toward the human. Elias walked to the counter again. "I'm looking for work." That caused a few people to laugh. The owner leaned both hands on the wood. "You picked the wrong town." "I need grain contracts." Elias said, "Transport, field security, harvest labor, anything paying honest. This time the laughter was louder. A man at one table turned in his chair. He was heavy-set, with a scar across his cheek and a Helix Combined badge pinned openly on his vest. "Honest," he said. "You hear that?" Man rode into Dryfall looking for honest work. A few others smirked. Elias did not look at them. He kept his eyes on the owner. The owner sighed. "Used to be work. Not much now." "Why?" Before the owner could answer, the man with the scar did it for him. "Because people here are finally learning who owns a grain." The room went a little quieter. Elias turned then, slowly, and looked at the speaker. The scarred man smiled without warmth. "Helix Combined keeps things running. Folks who understand that eat. Folks who don't," he shrugged. "Well, you saw the fields." Elias glanced once toward the black land outside. The scarred man stood up. "So here's a little advice. Human, if you're smart, you buy supplies and keep riding. And if I'm not smart?" Elias asked. A few people waited for the insult, the threat, the start of a fight. But the scarred man only smiled wider. "Then you'll fit right in with the dead." The room stayed still for a second. Then the front door opened. Everyone looked. A woman stepped in, carrying the red dust of the fields on her boots and coat. She was not old, but hardship had sharpened her face and made her look older than she was. Her dark hair was tied back. Her expression was tired, controlled, and completely fearless. She walked like someone too busy to care who was watching. This was Marcade. Her name passed quietly from table to table. Even Elias, who knew little about Dryfall, could feel the shift in the room when she entered. The owner spoke first. "Evening, Mara." She nodded once and laid a data slate on the counter. "Need replacement filters for my North Shield towers. And fuel cells if you still have them." The owner winced. Prices went up. Everything goes up. That doesn't make it easier. From behind her, the Helix man spoke again. "Could all get easier, Mara." She did not turn around, then say something new. A few people looked down into their drinks. The scarred man walked closer, slow and comfortable, like he believed the whole town belonged to him. "You can stop this whenever you want. Sell the field. Sign the transfer. Helix pays well enough for a widow." That made the room colder. Mara finally turned to face him. "My answer is the same." He gave a fake, patient smile. "Your husband gave the same answer." Nobody moved. Elias watched Mara carefully. Her face did not break, not even then. "That was his mistake," the man added. "No," Mara said. "It was yours." The scarred man's smile faded a little. "Careful. I have been careful," she said. "That's why I'm still standing." For a moment, Elias thought the man might strike her. His hand even shifted near his holstered weapon. But he looked around the room, saw too many eyes on him, and stepped back. "For now," he said. Mara turned away from him like he no longer existed and picked up her supplies list again. The owner cleared his throat and began gathering what he could. Elias remained where he was, studying her. Something about her was different from the others in town. Fear lived in Dryfall like weather, but it did not seem to live in her. She looked tired. Yes, hurt, certainly, but not broken. When the owner went to the back room, Mara noticed Elias standing nearby. "You're staring," she said. He answered simply. Wasn't trying to hide it. That almost sounded like it might become a smile, but did not. "You new here?" "Just arrived." "Then leave before morning," she said. "This town is bad for strangers. I've been in bad towns before." She glanced at the old revolver on his hip. "That doesn't surprise me." He looked toward the supply crates. "You run a field?" "Yes." "Still independent?" "For now." "That man said you were a widow." Her eyes hardened, though her voice stayed calm. "He talks too much." Elias accepted that. "You hiring?" This time she looked at him properly. He was not what Dryfall usually produced. He was lean rather than broad, quiet rather than proud. There was no company mark on his coat, no gang colors, no military insignia. Just dust, patience, and the strange stillness of someone who had survived places worse than this. "For what?" she asked. "Whatever needs doing." "I can't pay much." I didn't ask for much. And if Helix comes? Elias's answer was simple. Then Helix comes. She held his gaze for a long second, as if testing whether he understood the weight of that. Do you know what happened at my farm? She asked. No. They killed my husband, burned one of the outer fields, put watchers on the road. 2 workers quit. 1 disappeared. She tilted her head slightly. Still asking for work? Yes. Why? He looked past her, out through the dusty window, toward the far fields under the dying light. For grain, he said. That answer sounded almost foolish. Too small, too plain for a place like this. But he said it like it was enough. Mara studied him a little longer, then nodded toward the door. I leave at first light. North Road, half an hour from town. I'll be there. She collected her supplies and walked out without another word. As soon as the door shut behind her, voices returned. Crazy woman. Crazy human. He won't last. Neither will she. The scarred Helix man gave Elias a long look full of warning and promise. Then he turned and left with his friends. Elias stayed where he was until the room emptied a little. Then he took his meal to the upstairs room and ate in silence by the window. Outside, dry fall settled into darkness. Lights blinked across the town in weak lines. Farther out, over the plains, a few lonely lamps marked the field roads. One cluster of lights stood apart from the rest. Mara Cade's farm, he guessed. Much later, when most of the town had gone quiet, Elias noticed movement near the edge of the road, leading north. 2 vehicles. No lights. Watching. Not passing. Not traveling. Waiting. He stood slowly and rested one hand near the old revolver at his side. From below, the wind pushed dust against the building like dry waves against stone. In the dark beyond town, eyes were already on the widow's farm. And by morning, they would be watching for the human, too. The morning on Kestrel, 9 came without kindness. There was no soft sunrise, no gentle light. The sky turned pale and harsh, and the red dust rose again as if the night had only been a short pause. Dry fall woke slowly, like a tired man who did not want another day. Before the town fully stirred, Elias Varn was already on the road. He rode north, just as Mara had said. The land outside Dryfall was wide and empty. The ground looked cracked and dry, but life still held on. Lines of engineered grain stretched across the plains, glowing faint gold under the weak sun. Between them stood thin towers, old machines that controlled heat, air pressure, and moisture. Without those towers, nothing would grow. Elias rode in silence, his eyes moving constantly. He was not just traveling. He was watching. Tracks in the dust, broken stems in the fields, marks near the roadside. He saw signs of movement. Not random, not natural. Someone had been here, more than once. After about half an hour, he saw the farm. It stood alone, surrounded by a wide stretch of land. A small house made of metal and reinforced panels. 2 storage silos. 3 shield towers, one of them damaged. And fields, still alive, still growing. This was Mara Cade's world, and it was under pressure. Mara was already outside when Elias arrived. She stood near one of the towers, tools in her hand, working without pause. "You're late," she said without looking at him. Elias glanced at the sky. "I'm not." She tightened the bolt and stepped back. "You ride like someone careful." "I ride like someone who wants to arrive." That was enough for her. She nodded once toward the fields. "We start there." There was no welcome, no long talk, just work. The day moved fast. Elias worked beside Mara in silence at first. They repaired broken lines, checked the soil regulators, and replaced filters in the shield towers. The machines were old, and every part seemed close to failure. But Mara knew each piece by memory. She worked hard, too hard. She did not stop unless something forced her to. Elias noticed. "Your workers?" he asked after a while. "Gone," she said. "All of them. Most left after the attack. 1 stayed." She pointed toward the far side of the field. "He comes when he can." "Not enough." "No," she said, "but it's what I have." They moved along the edge of the grain rows. The plants were strong but sensitive. One wrong setting, one broken line, and entire sections could die within hours. As Elias adjusted control panel, he spoke again. You should have more protection. I had it. What happened? She did not answer right away. She kept working, pulling a damaged cable free. Then she said, Helix came at night. Elias waited. They didn't send soldiers first. They sent drones. Cut the power. Dropped the shields. Her hands tightened slightly. Then they came in. How many? Enough. He could hear something in her voice now. Not fear. Not even anger. Something colder. They asked him to sign, she continued, to sell the land. And your husband? He refused. Elias already knew the rest. They shot him in front of the house, she said, simple and flat. Then they burned part of the field and left. The wind moved through the grain, making a low sound like distant voices. Elias stood still for a moment. Then he said, And you stayed? Yes. Why? She looked at him this time. Really looked. Because if I leave, she said, then everything he died for becomes nothing. Elias nodded once. That answer made sense to him. By midday, the heat rose sharply. The sky became white, and the air felt heavy. The shield towers worked harder to keep the crops alive. One of them flickered, then stabilized. Mara wiped sweat from her face and leaned against a post for a moment. Elias noticed the burn marks near the edge of the field. He walked over. The ground there was black, dead. The grain had not grown back. The soil looked poisoned, damaged beyond easy repair. He crouched and touched it lightly. Chemical burn, he said. Yes. Recent. A few days. Elias stood and looked around the area. Something was wrong. The burn was not random. It had shape, direction. It was a message. He stepped back and saw it clearly. The pattern in the dead field formed words. Sell or starve. He exhaled slowly. Subtle, he said. Mara walked up beside him. They don't need to hide. Why didn't you erase it? I see it every day, she said. So I don't forget who I'm dealing with. Elias nodded. That made sense too. Later in the afternoon, the wind changed. It came from the west now, stronger, carrying thicker dust. Visibility dropped slightly. The horizon blurred. Elias stopped what he was doing and looked toward the road. Mara noticed. What? Company, he said. She followed his gaze. At first there was nothing. Then shapes appeared through the dust. 3 figures. Walking, not riding. They moved slowly, confidently, like men who were not worried about being shot. Mara's jaw tightened. Helix. Elias did not reach for his weapon. Do they come often? He asked. When they feel like it. The 3 men approached the edge of the farm and stopped just outside the main field line. They wore light armor and carried energy rifles. One of them stepped forward. It was not the scarred man from the town. This one was younger, sharper. His eyes moved constantly, measuring everything. Mara Cade, he called out. Still working. Mara stepped forward. Still breathing. The man smiled slightly. That can change. Elias stayed behind her, quiet, watching. The man's eyes moved to him. And who is this? He asked. Worker, Mara said. The man tilted his head. No. Yes. Human. Elias said nothing. The man looked interested now. That's rare. You pick your help carefully. I pick who says yes, Mara replied. The man took a few steps closer, just enough to show confidence, not enough to cross into clear danger. Your time is almost done, he said. Helix is tired of waiting. I'm not selling. You will. No. The man sighed like he was bored. You think this is strength. It's not. It's delay. He gestured toward the burn field. That was a warning, he said. Next time, we don't write words. Silence followed. The wind pushed dust between them. Then Elias spoke. Then what do you do? The man looked at him again. You're talking now? Just asking. The man smiled thinly. We take everything. Elias nodded slightly. You already tried that. Not properly. Elias took one slow step forward, now standing beside Mara. Then try again, he said. The tone was calm. No anger, no challenge, just a statement. That made it worse. The Helix man studied him carefully now. Humans, he said softly, always think they're different. Elias answered, sometimes we are. The man held his gaze for a few seconds, then chuckled. All right, he said, we'll see. He stepped back and signaled the others. Soon, he added. Then they turned and walked away, disappearing into the dust. The farm felt quieter after they left, but not safer. Mara exhaled slowly. You should leave. No, they will come back. Yes. With more. Yes. She looked at him with frustration now. Then why are you still here? Elias looked out over the fields. The living grain, the dead patch with its message, the broken tower. Then he said, because they think this is easy. And I don't like easy for people like them. Mara shook her head slightly. You don't understand. This isn't a fight you win. Elias finally looked at her. I'm not trying to win, he said. That answer confused her. Then what are you trying to do? She asked. He paused for a moment. Then he said, change the shape of the fight. That evening, as the light faded again, Elias began to move differently. He walked the edges of the farm, measured distances, checked blind spots, studied the towers, the silos, the ground. Mara watched him. What are you doing? She asked. Preparing. For what? For when they come back. She crossed her arms. With what? You have one old gun. Elias glanced at it. That's not the point. Then what is? He picked up a length of cable from a broken crate. Time, he said. He moved toward one of the outer lines and began setting something up. Not a machine. Not a system connected to the network. Something simple. Physical. Mara followed, watching closely. What is that? She asked. A reminder. For who? For them. He worked quietly, tying, adjusting, placing small objects in exact positions. He used scrap, wire, loose parts, things that looked useless. But the way he placed them was not random. It was careful, intentional. Mara felt a strange chill. This won't stop them, she said. No, Elias agreed, but it will slow them. And then he looked out into the darkening land. Then they start making mistakes. Night fell. The farm lights turned on, weak but steady. Far out in the darkness, something moved. Not close. Not yet. Watching. Waiting. But this time, the farm was not the same. It was no longer just a place trying to survive. It was becoming something else. Something quiet. Something patient. Something dangerous. And for the first time since her husband died, Mara Kay did not feel alone. The night did not stay quiet. On Kestrel 9, silence was never peace. It was only the space between trouble. Mara did not sleep much. She sat inside the small house, a rifle resting across her lap, eyes fixed on the window. The farm lights cast weak circles across the land, leaving long shadows in between. Every sound felt louder at night. The wind, the creak of metal, the soft hum of failing machines. Outside, Elias Varn moved like he belonged to the dark. He had not come inside. Instead, he walked the edges of the farm again and again, checking what he had set earlier. Thin wires stretched low across narrow paths. Small weighted pieces hung hidden between posts. Loose panels were placed just right, ready to fall. Nothing looked like a weapon. That was the point. This was not the kind of fight Helix expected. This was human work. Slow, quiet, careful. Elias finally stopped near the burn field, where the words still marked the soil. Sell or starve. He looked at it for a long moment. Then he turned away. They chose the words, he said softly to himself. Now they live with them. Just before midnight, the first sign came, a faint vibration. Not sound, not light, movement. Elias crouched low, his hand resting near his revolver. His eyes moved across the dark land beyond the farm. Then he saw them. Shadows shifting through shadows. Multiple figures. More than before. Helix had come back. And this time, they were not here to talk. Inside the house, Mara heard it too, a soft metallic snap. Then another. She stood immediately, lifting her rifle. "What was that?" she whispered. From outside, Elias's voice came, low and controlled. "Stay inside." That was all he said. That was enough. The first Helix man never saw what hit him. He stepped forward through the outer line, moving carefully but not carefully enough. His boot caught a thin wire stretched low across the ground. There was a sharp pull, then a heavy metal plate swung down from above. It struck him hard, throwing him to the ground. He did not die, but he made noise, and noise was a mistake. Elias moved instantly. One step, one breath, a single shot. The old revolver cracked through the night, loud, sharp, final. The man stopped moving. The others froze. They had expected a quiet entry. They had not expected this. "Contact!" one of them shouted. Too late. The second trap triggered before they could regroup. A Helix soldier rushed forward, trying to reach cover near a storage unit. The ground beneath him shifted. Loose soil gave way. He dropped suddenly into a shallow pit Elias had prepared hours before, hitting hard and losing his weapon. Before he could climb out, another shot, precise, cold, no wasted movement. Now the night exploded into chaos. Energy rifles lit up the dark with bright streaks of plasma. Shots tore through the air, hitting metal walls, cutting lines into the ground. Mara flinched inside as light flashed past the window. She tightened her grip on the rifle. "Stay inside," Elias had said, but she could not just sit and wait. Not again, not like before. Her jaw clenched. She moved toward the door. Outside, Elias kept moving. He did not stand still long enough to be targeted. He did not return fire blindly. Every shot he took had purpose. He used the land, the shadows, the structures. He disappeared between movements. Helix soldiers fired into empty space, hitting nothing. "Where is he?" one of them shouted. "Spread out." Another mistake. Elias smiled slightly. A third trap triggered near the irrigation line. One soldier stepped across what looked like a broken pipe. Pressure shifted. The pipe burst suddenly, not with water, but with stored gas from the system. The release hit him full force, knocking him off balance. Before he could recover, Elias was there. Close. Too close. The revolver fired again. At this range, it did not need to be advanced. It just needed to work. The remaining Helix men pulled back slightly, taking cover behind a low ridge. "This is not normal," one of them said, breathing hard. "No," another answered. "It's human." That word carried weight. Fear. Inside the house, Mara could not stay still anymore. She stepped out. The air hit her face, dry, hot, filled with dust and the sharp smell of burned metal. Shots echoed across the farm. She saw movement, flashes of light, and Elias, not standing, not hiding, but moving like he understood the fight better than anyone else. He was not stronger than them. He was not better armed, but he was controlling the battle. That was something Mara had never seen before. One of the Helix soldiers spotted her. "Target on the house," he shouted. His rifle lifted. Mara reacted instantly. She raised her weapon and fired. The shot hit his shoulder, spinning him back. It was not perfect, but it was enough. Elias saw it, and he adjusted. He moved toward her position, using her shot as distraction. Another Helix soldier tried to follow, and triggered a final trap. A weighted cable snapped tight across his path, pulling him forward violently. He hit the ground hard. Elias closed the distance. One more shot. Silence returned slowly, broken only by the wind and the low hum of damaged equipment. Elias stood still, scanning the area, counting, watching, waiting. No more movement. For now, Mara stepped forward, her hand still tight around the rifle. "It's over," she asked. "For tonight," Elias said. She looked around. The bodies, the damage, the broken lines. "They'll come back," she said. "Yes." "With more." "Yes." She let out a slow breath. "This doesn't end." "No," Elias said. "It changes." They worked through the rest of the night, not resting, not talking much. They dragged bodies away from the main field, repaired what they could, reset what had been used. Mara's hand shook at first. Then they steadied. She was not the same person she had been before. Something had shifted. She had fired. She had stood. She had fought. And she had not broken. As the sky began to lighten again, the farm looked different. Still damaged. Still under threat. But no longer helpless. Mara stood near the edge of the burned field, looking at the message again. Sell or starve. She picked up a tool, walked forward, and began to break the soil. Elias watched her. You don't have to do that now, he said. Yes, I do, she replied. She drove the tool into the ground, cutting through the words. They don't get to write my land, she said. Elias nodded once. That was the right answer. From far above, unseen by them, something moved. A Helix surveillance drone. It had been watching the entire time, recording, analyzing, sending everything back. Somewhere beyond the horizon, inside a heavily armed command vehicle, a man watched the footage. KRYSS Val. Tall, cold, enhanced beyond normal limits. His eyes did not blink often. He watched the human carefully. Every movement, every shot, every decision. Then he leaned back slightly. A farmer, one of his officers said, and a drifter. KRYSS shook his head slowly. No, he said, that is not a farmer. The officer frowned. Then what is he? KRYSS's expression did not change. That, he said quietly, is a problem. Back on the farm, Elias stood beside Mara as the new day began. The wind rose again. The dust moved again. Nothing about the world had become easier, but something had changed. Helix had come expecting control. They had found resistance, and not the kind they understood. Elias looked out over the land. They'll bring everything next time, Mara said. Yes. She turned to him. Can we stop them? Elias did not answer immediately. Then he said, not the way they think. That answer was enough. For now, far in the distance, engines began to wake. Not small ones, not quiet ones. Heavy, loud, coming closer. The next fight would not be like this one. It would be bigger, faster, deadlier. And this time, Helix would not underestimate them again. Morning came heavy, not with light, with sound. The ground itself seemed to shake as engines rolled across the distant plains. Not one, not a few, many. Mara stood outside the house, her rifle hanging loose in her hand, eyes fixed on the horizon. They're early, she said quietly. Elias stood beside her, calm as before. No, he replied. They're angry. Dust rose in the distance, thick and wide like a storm wall. Shapes moved inside it, large, armored, and fast. This was no scouting party. This was Helix coming to end it. Within minutes, the sky darkened, not from clouds, but from ships. 2 gunships hover high above the land, their engines humming like something alive. On the ground, armored vehicles spread out in a wide arc, cutting off the farm from every side. Mara felt her chest tighten. This is it, she said. Yes. We can't fight this. No, Elias said. She looked at him sharply. Then what are we doing? Elias adjusted his coat slightly, his hand resting near the old revolver. We're changing the rules. The vehicle stopped just outside the main field. Ramps lowered. Soldiers stepped out, many more than before. Heavier armor, stronger weapons. No hesitation. At the center of it all, one figure moved forward. Tall, controlled, different. This was KRYSS Val. Even from a distance, he looked wrong. Too still, too perfect. His body had been enhanced beyond normal limits. His movements were precise, efficient, almost mechanical. Mara swallowed. That's him. Elias nodded. I know. KRYSS stopped a few meters from the edge of the field. He did not shout. He did not threaten. He simply spoke. And somehow, everyone heard him. Mara Cade, he said, you've made this more difficult than it needed to be. Mara stepped forward. Her voice did not shake. I told you my answer. KRYSS tilted his head slightly. Yes, you did. His eyes shifted to Elias. And you, he said, you are new. Elias said nothing. KRYSS studied him for a moment. Then he smiled slightly. Human. That word carried meaning. Recognition. Interest. You've caused losses. KRYSS continued. Small, but annoying. Elias finally spoke. You brought enough to fix that. KRYSS's smile did not change. I did. The soldiers behind KRYSS shifted, ready, weapons lifted. Everything pointed toward the farm. Mara felt it, the pressure, the weight of numbers. This was not a fight anymore. This was execution. She stepped closer to Elias. This is where it ends, she whispered. Elias shook his head slightly. No. Then something strange happened. Elias stepped forward. Alone, unarmed. Mara's eyes widened. What are you doing? Stay here, he said. That won't. Stay. There was something in his voice. Something firm. Something final. Mara stopped. Elias walked toward KRYSS slowly. The soldiers tensed. Weapons tracked his movement, but he did not stop. Not until he stood directly in front of KRYSS Val. Close enough to be killed in a second. Close enough to matter. KRYSS looked down at him slightly. You walk into this without fear, KRYSS said. Elias answered simply. I walk into it with purpose. KRYSS studied him. Then speak. The wind moved between them. Dust curled across the ground. Everything waited. Then Elias said, I'm not just a worker. KRYSS said nothing. I'm a claimant. That word landed differently. Some of the Helix officers shifted. KRYSS's eyes narrowed slightly. Explain. Elias reached into his coat slowly. Every weapon aimed tighter. But he pulled out only a small device. A data key. He held it up. I have legal claim to this land, he said. Mara's breath caught behind him. KRYSS's expression changed, just slightly. That land belongs to Helix, he said. No, Elias replied. It doesn't. He activated the device. A faint signal pulsed outward, upward, into the sky. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a soft tone echoed from above. One of the orbiting satellites shifted. Then another. Systems woke. Old systems. Forgotten systems. Ancient legal frameworks built during the early expansion of humanity. KRYSS turned his head slightly, listened to something only he could hear. One of his officers spoke urgently into a comm device. Sir, we're receiving confirmation. KRYSS raised a hand, silencing him. His eyes stayed on Elias. What did you do? Elias's voice stayed calm. I invoked human frontier law. KRYSS's jaw tightened slightly. That law is obsolete. No, Elias said. It's ignored. The air felt different now. Tighter. More dangerous. Under that law, Elias continued, any human who claims partnership in independent frontier land, he paused, creates protected status. Mara stared at him. You didn't. Elias did not look back. I did. Above them, the gunship shifted slightly, not attacking, waiting. Their systems were now receiving updated directives. Helix systems, bound by contracts, bound by law, even if they hated it. KRYSS's voice dropped. Show me. Elias held the device out. KRYSS scanned it instantly. Data flowed. Verification codes. Ownership transfer. Mara Cade's land. Now shared. Now linked. Now changed. KRYSS stepped back slightly. Not in fear, but in calculation. This is a delay, he said. Nothing more. Maybe, Elias said, but if you take this land now. He looked up toward the ships. You break your own contracts. Silence. Heavy. Real. One of the Helix officers spoke again, quieter this time. Sir, legal conflict confirmed. Enforcement risk high. KRYSS did not look at him. His eyes stayed on Elias. You think this protects you? KRYSS asked. No. Elias said, it protects the land. For the first time, something like anger flickered in KRYSS's expression. You cost me time, he said. Yes. You cost me resources. Yes. And now you cost me authority. Elias did not answer that. He did not need to. KRYSS looked past him. At Mara, at the farm, at the fields, then back at Elias. This is not over, he said. Elias nodded. I know. KRYSS held his gaze for one long moment. Then he turned. "Withdraw," he ordered. The word hit harder than any weapon. Helix soldiers hesitated, then obeyed. Vehicles powered down. Gunships lifted higher. Slowly, carefully, the force that had come to destroy everything began to pull back. Mara stood frozen, watching, not believing it. "They're leaving," she said softly. Elias walked back toward her. "Yes." "How?" "You heard it." "No," she said. "I mean, why would they care?" Elias looked at the retreating forces. "They don't care," he said. "They're forced to." The last vehicle turned. The dust began to settle. The sky cleared. And just like that, they were gone. Silence returned to the farm. Real silence this time. Mara looked at Elias. "You changed everything." Elias shook his head slightly. "No, you did. I just used what was already there." She stared at him. "You could have left," she said. "Yes." "But you didn't." "No." "Why?" Elias looked out over the land. The broken parts. The surviving grain. The place that had almost been taken. Then he said, "Because some places are worth staying for." Mara said nothing for a long moment. Then she looked at the fields again, at the space where the message had been, at the land that was still hers, still theirs. "You're not just a drifter," she said. Elias gave a small, quiet answer. "No." Days passed, slowly, carefully. No Helix forces returned. Not yet. The farm began to recover. Repairs were made. New growth appeared where the soil had been damaged. The work was still hard, still dangerous. But it was different now. Elias stayed, not as a hired hand, not as a visitor, but as something else, something rare, someone who chose to remain when leaving would have been easier. People in Dryfall began to talk about the human, about what happened, about how Helix had come with everything and left with nothing. Out on the frontier, stories spread fast, and this one carried far. A man rode into town for grain and stayed to change the rules. At sunset, Mara stood beside Elias at the edge of the field. The wind moved softly now. For once, it did not feel hostile. "What happens next?" she asked. Elias looked toward the horizon. "Now," he said, "we grow." And on Kestrel 9, for the first time in a long while, the future did not belong to fear. It belonged to those who refused to break.